Hey guys, I'm Rebecca with Conscious Accounting, and today we have Chris Delaney with us. He's the owner of Intentional Ventures and other companies too that he's going to tell us all about today. So Chris, thank you so much for being here today.
Stoked to be here. This is incredible.
Yeah, I'm so excited to learn everything about you. And I know we have so much in common when it comes to helping businesses thrive and just like cool stories that we both probably have and funny stories and all that good stuff. So let's start by just kind of hearing your story, what businesses you own, what they all are, why you own them.
Sure.
What are your goals? Tell us everything.
Yeah. Do we have like 5 episodes?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll keep it super short. I mean, my journey was super interesting. I'm from upstate New York originally. And a large part of my journey was actually the first 21 years of my life taking care of my mom. She passed away of breast cancer in 2006, 2007. And it plays into my story because I thought that my future was going to be set. I was going to go to certain schools and all this other stuff. And then by 21, it was kind of, unknown, uncertain.
Yep.
I did what everybody's supposed to do, which is I tried going to school and I got great grades, but it wasn't really for me. Mm-hmm. And so I think my pathway led me towards like the service industry. So I was in bartending, serving, which I think everybody should do.
Why?
Really, because I mean, you get to know people, right?
Yeah.
You get to know people, and I started realizing customer experience, and then I got into everything from front of house, back of house, understanding how to create a great experience, and then repeat customers too. So I started recognizing that the variable of my tips were directly proportionate to the service I gave, so the experience.
Wow.
And, I really enjoyed it, but it's a high burnout kind of thing.
Totally.
And then, I went into the corporate world, back in 2013, I think it was, and I worked for a Fortune 500, not to be named. And, it gave me a space to learn more about business from a functional standpoint. So I was in sales and operations, hiring, training, really enjoyed it, but then I got promoted pretty quickly to a huge role that I was not prepared for. And burned out really heavily. I went from New York to Georgia. I was involved in everything from pricing to yield modeling to, process improvement, team hiring, team firing, all that stuff. And, part of my journey was being in the corporate world. And I left when I was 31 because I felt like I was leaving a part of me at home all the time, which was my passion, my creativity, and my sense of human connection. So by 31, I was starting from scratch. And so entrepreneurship for me was not necessarily something I looked for. Mm-hmm. It was really something out of necessity. And so I ended up in West Texas with my brother. And as luck would have it, the job I got was in the insurance world. Huh. And I ended up working for a commission because I applied for 250 other jobs, and that was the place that called me back. And so I learned a lot because in that area of Texas, like way west, it's all handshake, look in the eye. Mm-hmm. Learned a lot about building relationships, connecting to people, listening a lot, and just naturally gravitated towards a lot of that. I took those skills for the next 2 years. I had a really tough year in 2018, which I talk about partnerships a lot, and a partner that collapsed our business. And so that was a really tough financial year for me, but I learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah, I bet.
And so, I think we shy away from failure, but failure is where you learn.
Absolutely.
And so it's constant learning. So about 3 years ago, I started my coaching and consulting business, which now is Intentional Ventures. And it's kind of iterated and evolved into the work that I do now, which is creatives and innovators who are, at a stable place of revenue, and they're looking to accomplish a mission where it requires a company. Okay. So founders being involved in those conversations, structure, hyper growth, kind of being there to support the team. So I do a lot of nurturing and guidance and coaching. Mm-hmm. And then I do a lot of guiding and steering. So I work with that and take equity parts of the business, or I do some, workshops, day-long events with the folks in the company. Uh-huh. And then that's one business that I own. And then I have 2 others that I have partners in. One is Tri-Vibe Collective. It's a clothing brand, but it's got a story behind it. It's all about intentionality. We partner with artists. We have an incredible creative director out of Canada.
Wow.
And content writer. And our goal was just spread this idea of intentionality through the brand. Mm-hmm. So that's launching this year. We had a tough year in 2020 because of COVID.
Of course, yeah.
And then I'm just super open. Like we've been talking about this whole Clubhouse thing just opened up.
Yeah.
And
tell us about Clubhouse. What's the deal? Why do you like it?
Yeah.
Tell us everything.
It's it came out of nowhere. I found out about it in December. Mm-hmm. And so for those who don't know, Clubhouse is like a whole new social media platform, but it's been around for a couple of years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think it was developed in like 2014, 2015. And so essentially it's a voice only platform, and you just have a picture on there, but you get to choose rooms that you go into. Mm-hmm. So there's topics of all kinds, from business to relationships to diversity, inclusion, like as gritty as you want to go.
Cool.
But the cool thing about it right now is that there's like under, I think, 5 million people on the platform. So heavy concentration of really talented people,
Right.
and conversations of access. So I've met A-list celebrities, I've met, producers, I've met, major business leaders that you otherwise would never connect to.
Right.
And so I was hooked on it immediately. And I realized the potential for building actual community. And so that's led me to really leverage a lot of my time on the platform. I'm talking like 10 to 12 hours a day right now. And so the reason why is unlike other social media platforms, you don't have to have pretty pictures. You don't have to spend time creating content. You can just pop on
That's very cool.
and have some great conversations. So it was naturally something I was looking for last year during COVID. So I think it was like perfect timing of timing in the marketplace. And then also people are just seeking that connection. And so that's been huge.
Wow. So what kind of things are you talking about or listening to on there?
All kinds of stuff initially. When I first popped on, I just went in and listened. And, I listened to, and to be honest with you, conversations that we don't have access to on Facebook and Instagram, like, people talking about how, they're diminishing, their Black culture in white spaces. Like these are real conversations, relationships. And so then I realized the opportunity to create spaces. So I host 2 rooms a day, one in the morning for intention setting for just an hour, which is giving back to the community, which has grown pretty well. And then at night, I actually partner with 2 good friends of mine who are exceptional moderators. And then I've been building kind of my friend base on there that I bring in front of audiences. And so we talk about ways to build community, connect, and communicate. And my goal is to really create the intentional and conscious spaces for those conversations to happen.
Wow.
And it's been a lot of fun.
That's so cool. So tell me about this whole intentional thing. Oh, geez. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm professional. I don't even know why I have my phone here.
It's all good.
Tell me, like, so, I've heard you say intentional several times so far. So when did that word become a word in your vocabulary, and what does it mean to you, and what should we all be thinking of when we hear that word?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, I think it was when I left the corporate world and I was kind of going through also a divorce at the same time. There was a lot going on. You find yourself in these moments where, everything that you know to be true is kind of stripped away and you're kind of left with like, who are you really? Right. And so asking myself the question, what do I want intuitively, came out of nowhere. And it's a hard question to answer because it takes time and it's a lifelong journey.
Totally. It evolves, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And so you find yourself like really doing things for other people. You find yourself really trying to be something for others, especially if you have kids and you're married and all these different things. And so the intentionality for me really boils down to the idea of once you reconcile that you've been taught certain things your entire life and you didn't really choose them, and then you confront them, you find yourself at a place where you get to choose again. The challenge is that when you choose, everything is going to go into chaos because the people that know you don't know how to respond to you anymore.
Right.
Your relationships can be challenged. You're going to go on a thoughtful journey. And so, intentionality to me is important because it's all about you taking back your personal power. But you can't do that until you take radical self-responsibility. So in which case you can't be a victim anymore, which is a hard pill to swallow too, because then you have to take your responsibility for what you've done in your life.
Yep.
So everything that I do, every business that I'm a part of, I have this idea that every business is a manifestation of my core philosophy, which is around intentionality and connection to human beings. I have this hypothesis in my mind that I believe that all human beings can connect on 3 stories. On life and death, mortality, love, and then spirituality and faith. And I think I've experienced talking to thousands of people over the last couple of years that when we start to actually have those deep conversations and we allow ourselves to be open to them, it doesn't matter what your background is, we can connect.
Yeah, because we're just humans. We're all totally.
100%.
And how interesting to think about bringing that into a conversation about business.
Yeah.
It's you're talking about your mother who passed, and my dad just passed this year, and I thought, oh, should I mention that? Like, no, this is a business thing, so I shouldn't. But how interesting that, I think, no, like my real like human feelings should not be a part of my business. And what if we allowed all that to come into business? What, how would our sense of community change and how we interact with each other? This is interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that my life and the intention that I had was to create spaces where I could be me. So first I had to know me and understand me.
Right.
And then choosing, like, I don't get involved in any businesses just for profit. There's things that have to be there for me. And the first thing is freedom. I have to be who I am. Otherwise I can't be the best I can be for that business, for whatever But I think the other thing too is, we get taught that business is separate from our lives, but how you do anything is how you do everything.
Right.
So what ends up happening is when we create those traditional types of businesses, and we found this during COVID, so many people are suffering because they can't say anything and they should know everything. And if they don't, then they're a failure and they're an idiot. And then they also have to hide certain failures from their family. And so it just creates a lot of energetic perception management, and people are suffering because of it. So my mission is to really dissolve that and help people begin to align everything in that sense of integrity. And so, Dr. Gay Hendricks says in the book, The Big Leap, which I highly recommend, when we think of integrity, instead of it being a morality thing, should or shouldn't, and make it a physical thing, is or isn't, then it creates a lot of interesting concepts, because it just is, are you doing what you believe? And if you don't, then you're out of integrity. So check back in and figure out, do you have your belief systems and what are you doing with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So give me an example of like how you could do that mental check with yourself.
Yeah. So basically when you're looking at something, and I do this a lot with business owners and people that I meet, and they're saying, I want to start this business. And a lot of times, I want to impact people, and which is amazing.
Yeah.
My question really is, what does impact mean? How do you define that? Like, how do you know you're there?
Right.
And then also, why do you want to do that? And so people will begin to expand it like outwardly again. I want to make sure people feel good, and I want to serve people. And I'm like, great. What's in it for you? And so opening that space up to say, like, really, really directly, like, I want to be validated. I want to be seen as powerful or have efficacy. I want to be, I want to heal wounds of not being seen as a child, right? I want to be able to choose different food for my children and for me. Those are real desires and wants that I think we get taught to, like, that's selfish.
Totally.
But you have to know that reciprocity has to exist. So what do you want?
Right.
And I can't help somebody get what they want until they're honest with it.
Sure.
And so until I know both the great aspects and kind of the stuff behind the scenes that you don't share, I can't really do my job and help you. And that's really my interest, is making sure that those conversations become normalized, of being able to share. Like, these are human beings with human experiences. Business is not like a separate thing. There's people behind businesses who are making decisions, and those decisions are based on the beliefs that they carry. And so you're either in the integrity of what you believe, or you're trying to do something else. And if you do, like, you're splitting your attention, your energy, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so powerful to think about. And like you said, like, nobody is taking the time to think about that.
We don't get taught this.
No.
And you meet people all the time, and I'm a college dropout, right? So people say I should know these things. I'm like, school doesn't prepare us for these things.
No.
and the bigger thing is, as entrepreneurs or as small business owners, you're innovating, which means you're on the edge of what people know. And so you're constantly be going into that unknown. And so you have to be really secure and comfortable in who you are, but also be willing to be open to the lessons.
Right.
And once you do that, you begin and you start. The biggest challenge for me when I came out of the corporate world wasn't that I was lacking inspiration. I didn't have a plan. But the bigger thing was, as an entrepreneur, and I see it happen a lot, is we're selling our self-worth versus marketing our value. And so what happens there is that we go out into the world, especially as entrepreneurs who are their brand or their business, and we create these products and we're like, hey, I would love for you to buy this. And then people say no to it because you're not marketing it properly or sharing what they need to hear, and you're making it about you. And the next thing you know, they reject it, and it's like,
it feels very personal.
Very personal.
It's your baby, right? Because you have ownership in it, as opposed to working for a company. And yeah. So you mentioned values. So are you proposing that really it's about kind of sending the messaging of what the value is, and that can help, like, pivot from the self-worth part? Or
I have this belief that business to me is a very spiritual journey, and I mean that because what business does for me is it gives me a very defined container, and it gives me feedback. So my business will tell me what it needs, and it's like a close, intimate relationship always. And so if I'm not listening to my business and I'm only paying attention to it when it's giving me money, how would people respond to you in that same container? And so if I look at my business as a bi-directional thing, like I always say, don't start a business to solve your problems financially any more than you would add a baby into a bad marriage.
Right.
Because you're just making bad decisions, right? And you're compounding the problem. And so when we talk about this worth and the value, oftentimes we suffer because we're making it about us versus serving our clients.
Right.
And so if we can better understand the needs of our clients and start that conversation, that's a big one. 42% of small businesses fail in their 10th year because the market no longer deems their service valuable. And that's because we're not paying attention anymore to what the market is saying. So value is our ability to have that conversation with the market and for our market to tell us, which makes marketing easier.
Right.
It makes your sales process so much easier. Yeah.
What do you want?
What do you want? Like, I have certain skills that I have and certain things that I love to do. And everybody that I meet, I know people tell me in marketing, niche down, be specific. I'm not a big fan of that. For
Really?
me,
Why?
because
We just had a conversation about this morning.
Yeah. I think you have to be careful of the people you choose to be advisors into your business because they have to align with your core philosophy.
Right. True.
As an innovator for me, and I just know this because I've studied myself and I've gone through the performance, tests and everything else.
Yeah.
I need to partner with people who aren't really telling me what's possible. What I need them to do is really help me bring my vision to fruition. So working with marketing
Solutions based kind of
100%, but being able to be with me in that vision and figure out like we might be doing something new here and we're excited about it. Let's go do that instead of projecting, limitation
and benchmarking. Well, other people try, totally.
So we're having a fast conversation on this, but I mean, most people aren't getting into a conversation with people saying, how do we measure success, right? They have no KPIs in their business, measurable outcomes. And then they don't know how to vet because they've never really worked with a marketing team, which is why I see so many businesses get quite frankly screwed by marketing companies and everything else.
So true.
Because there's a relationship between the marketing team and your business. If you have a bad product, marketing won't fix that problem.
Yeah.
And then you're putting them in a bad spot. On the flip side, you have to be able to understand what the marketing team brings to the table.
Yes.
For what they understand about your niche, your vision. When I say niche, for me, what I'm constantly thinking about is I have a network of people that I trust, and everybody that I meet, no matter what, I'm trying to convert them into a raving fan of me. And that's something that I learned in the corporate world with something like Net Promoter Score. How can I convert this person into a raving fan? Because no matter what, that capital, that social capital that's going to be happening, I can move them to your business or to somebody else's.
Right.
I mean, last year we referred out close to $300,000 in closed business to partners of mine. And there was no sales cycle. It was, this is the person for you because I know their business well.
Right.
And I know the needs of that client. And there you go.
Because I look at them as a human and they look at me as a human.
100%.
And we're just humans helping each other.
And so in this process of discovery, when you're going through, I guess, like your prospecting or whatever, my whole philosophy is, how do I partner with this person to find the truth? Because most people don't know how to ask for what they're looking for in the first place because they don't know what they want.
Definitely not.
And they don't know what's possible. We all have that same problem.
Yeah.
And so I've just done that a lot to understand it better than most so that I can be an advocate for those people and get them in front of the right people. And that's kind of how I position myself.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about mindset around kind of scarcity, I guess, because it sounds like you are someone who's comfortable walking away from something that doesn't serve you, right? Like even if it could pay your bills, it's like you really need to be intentional. You need to feel like your values are aligned and all that stuff. So, I have clients for sure that, have customers or clients of their own that like it's not a good fit, but they're like, I got to pay my bills and I guess I'm just going to have to do what they like. Their clients kind of own them, So, but it seems like you've kind of discovered, and maybe I'm just taking a guess at this, that it seems like you're someone who's pretty comfortable with not losing sight of you and what and your needs, and you're okay with maybe walking away from something. So like how do you do that? And just anything you want to share related to that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And so I want to make sure that I separate the detail of who I am personality wise and kind of my story away from the principles.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think for me on a detail basis, I'm very comfortable in uncertainty because I've had that a lot in my life. And so I actually I look for uncertainty because it actually is exciting to me. That's not going to be the same for a lot of other people who have low risk tolerance or have children and other things.
Sure.
So I think there's a balance here. And so for me, the principle really is that when you start your business, your main job is to get capital into the business.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that we have a realistic expectation because I find that a lot of people say like, just only work with certain people. But when you start your business, you're letting your market kind of help you understand. So you're partnering with your market, and then you're also trying to figure out what you love. So especially in that service industry that I work in, the service-based business, where it's more about know, like, and trust factor, you have to get really crystal clear on your ideal client, but it takes you time because you don't know like what you're capable of doing. You don't know what your market really wants. So one of the biggest things for me is market research. Market research is something a lot of people don't do because they don't know how to.
Yeah.
But it's as simple as like getting really comfortable with Google. Like I always say, Google is your business partner, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
And so, I have a 4-step process I go through with people who are starting a business or are looking to get it back realigned. Then it goes something like this. The first step is really taking the intersection between like your technical expertise, what you've learned if you're in the corporate world, or some skills that you have, your experience in life, which you learn, especially stuff you learned as a kid, communication, influence, whatever.
Totally.
And then take a look at the passions that you have, the things that you directly would talk about all day long given an opportunity. Those 3 things in the center of that, you'll kind of find an idea of what you see. And you're going to ask yourself, did I use that to solve a problem for me? and for other people. Oftentimes you find people like coaches who've been doing work in different capacity, whether it was as a manager or in high school or whatever. So they have the skill set of communication, of understanding how to set accountability and stuff like that, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And so we have an idea of kind of what we want to offer. The next thing after that is really thinking about your archetype of client. So when I say archetype, I mean, we're not going super deep, but we know that there's some genuine like trends that we see, like the burnt out executive leader or, the solo entrepreneur, right?
Right.
So we start thinking about the interests that we have there. And what it does is it say, okay, how would I learn more about them? And so we go into step 2, which is market research, which is really just getting curious and getting out into the market and having conversations.
Yeah.
I think we get too quick to create products because we need to make money, or we're trying to quit our jobs. Like, keep that capital. Like, there's no stress. Like, chill, right?
Yes.
Because money solves problems in business, big time. You can hire it and everything. So step 2 is market research. What I'm looking for in market research is I'm looking for the overall market size that I can get into, like what's my sizable opportunity of money. Yeah. And then I start niching it down as much as I can, or filtering it down into what's the buyer behavior? What are other people in the market doing? Mm-hmm. What's the fair market value for what I'm about to do? Which is great. Go on PayScale, find some of these things.
Yeah.
And then start having conversations. And when you have these conversations, be willing to give abundantly, like your resources, your time, especially if you're a coach, provide breakthrough, provide insight, serve. I've done hundreds of hours of free coaching in my life and still do.
Yeah.
Because people need to experience you. And if you do that, it's going to reduce the friction on your sales cycle later.
Right.
But you ask like the questions, like what would be your budget for something like this? How much would you pay? How would you want it delivered? What's your experience with something like this in the past? And you get real insight and information. And what they're doing is they're helping you with step 3, which is really your beta product, your minimally viable products. And so what you're doing there is you're kind of putting exactly what they asked for together, and then you're offering it back to them. And then it's like, if I did this, would you? If I would you?
Right.
And then you can do a discount on that or something just to get the testimonials, the social proof. But it helps you begin to iterate on this because it takes time. And then that step 4 for me is really driving to viability, which tells me an entrepreneur that is really focused on getting in front of their product or service, and they're selling. They believe in it. They're out there. They know their product. They know their process, and they know their ideal client. And so I don't really put a lot of money behind the business until I've proven viability.
Yeah.
No website really, unless you're selling a visual product. I try to keep it as lean as possible because you can earn while you learn a lot.
Right. Yeah. Huh. So this ideal client thing, people ask me that all the time. What's your ideal client? And I think, back to that scarcity thing, it's really easy to be like, anyone who will give me money so I can, pay my bills. Like, so how do you balance, like, I guess the fear of, I think a lot of entrepreneurs find it scary to have an ideal client because that means there's an opportunity cost. I might lose out on some other, like, so, how do you coach people through that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a real thing, and scarcity doesn't stop. So I want people to understand that it's not like you get somewhere and it's like, oh man, this is amazing. And there's new devils and new levels. So let's understand kind of what scarcity is. It's a conditioned response to a stimulus that we've learned over time. And so we learned this from our parents. We learned it from other people.
Yeah.
Before we're even 8 years old, before we know death, we know about dynamics of power, love, sex, relationship, influence, all these different things, and money, of course. Mm-hmm. And money is like our lifeblood. So we have to start realizing that we have this relationship to a construct of money or an idea. And so we have to get crystal clear on, like, what do we actually believe about money? Are you demonizing it? Does somebody have to lose in order for you to win? That's a big one. Yeah. And if you can start to create a flow of this, that's huge. So what we know about scarcity, and I work with psychologists on this, is scarcity and fear. Fear is a response, which should happen. It's natural.
Yeah.
But the challenge is when we have a fear response to things that don't threaten our lives. And so it's a conscious process of putting yourself continually in a position to experience that fear and consciously working through it. Right. So asking yourself the question, like, where does this come from? Does it serve me? What's actually happening right now?
Right.
And then what we want to do is we actually want to use breath to breathe into that. We breathe from our chest, breathe into the belly. Like, these are prompts that we can use. Mm-hmm. And then we start to see that we can actually work through that response the more we expose ourselves to it from that scarcity side. But from a mindset standpoint, what we're saying is when we build our business, the core fundamental of where people go wrong is they believe they're selling a product that people want, that they think they can sell, versus serving in the way that they actually want to serve. Mm-hmm. And so one thing I want to share with people is there's this tension between, like, I'm not entrepreneur enough. You can always have a job.
Yeah.
Jobs are amazing.
Yeah.
We tend to like crap on
A
jobs,
stigma, yeah, like it's a weakness or something.
but just look at it like you're giving yourself opportunity
Yeah.
and
It's
grow your
capital.
100%. So that money gives you options, right? And
Totally.
so one part that I love that you all do is giving people a plan for their money, because until you know, like, hey, I need X amount of dollars for this marketing team or this website, and here's my plan for it, then it's really hard.
Right.
So we have to have a balance between the mindset belief system and then also the plan. You have to have both. It can't exist with either. So with the scarcity piece, what I find with businesses that are established, and it's happening during COVID, is businesses that are kind of plateauing and they're serving a client that no longer, it was like a referral base or something like that. And so the business stagnates because you have a whole other list of clients that would love to come in that you could probably serve really well.
Yeah.
And you're also finding yourself at a place where a function of time in your business, you're spending so much time with clients that are wasting your time on revisions or complaints or like human to human issues,
Right.
where you're basically grinning and bearing it, and they're taking your time away from clients that would actually be great for you,
Right.
that would trust you, that would help you do what you do, right? In a creative agency, what we talk about is in your client acquisition model, do you communicate that you need to be fully trusted? Do you communicate what's in it for the client? So it's partly our responsibility,
Right.
in
To have that conversation.
and to lead people,
Yeah.
right? But that's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. So
Totally.
if you give people an opportunity to lead your business, they will in the best way they know how, and you're going to find yourself getting really upset. So you have to lead your business, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about that. Like, what if your clients are actually the ones like running your business?
Yeah. And they're just going to come in there and they're going to say like, hey, like, let's get the mouse here. We're going to build that website for you. And it's like, would you do that at a doctor's office?
Right.
So
Right.
it's kind of the similar kind of communication style of like, how do we build back the authority in our business? And it takes time. One, it takes experience. It takes the confidence, which confidence only comes from doing. There's no way, you can't hypothesize confidence.
Right.
You
And
know?
like you said, like you have to make those mistakes, to then create the boundaries. Like,
100%.
ooh, that I need a boundary now. Like, because how could you have known that you would have needed that boundary had you not had that client,
Totally.
Yeah. So it's like totally good to have these growing pains of
Natural.
Yeah.
No.
So how often do you think an entrepreneur should be like, like doing this like internal kind of check-in of like, hey, like how's my business doing? Like, do I need to hold any boundaries? Do I need to like pivot? Like, because I think we all just are in the grind. Like we're just like, we're not thinking about business development or change. It's just like, this is what I do. Like it ends up becoming a job again that we work for someone
100%.
else.
Yeah. So I think to kind of set the table, like I said before, there's no separation between you and your business. You are your business. And so if you start looking at it that way, instead of saying, what does my business need? Think about what you need.
Yeah.
What do I need? And so there's a few things that you can do. Like one, first and foremost, setting up your schedule the way that you work best. So little things like that focus on you first is super important. So set up your schedule, right?
So give me an example. Like, what's your schedule?
So I have some free flow, but here's what I do know, right? And I dive into some. I'm open to anything that gives me the edge. So things like masculine and feminine dynamics, energy work. I have a spiritual advisor. I have healers that work with me. I have, psychologists that I work with that are high performance psychologists because I'm looking for the edge, right?
Yeah.
So for me, what I realized right away is to be both fulfilled and get the job done is for me to bookend my day, right? So from when I wake up in the morning, I have a set routine in the morning that I just do something simple for mind, body, spirit. And so reading and journaling, doing some breath work, some meditation, and then getting a walk in and then getting some water. Perfect. We don't have to go crazy about this. And what that does is it prepares me to go into my day, and I don't work with anybody until after 10 o'clock.
Okay.
You do not want to talk to me before 10 o'clock because I need to get my mind right. And so I set that intention, and then at night, as best as I can, I do my best to make sure that I have a really low key right before I go to sleep. And what I do is each night at around 7 p.m., I signify that's the end of my workday, and I do what I call plan tomorrow today. And what I do is, and this is very specific, but it works for me. So I grab a piece of printer paper, I put it landscape, and I fold it in half, and I write on it. And a lot of people want digital. I love writing because when you're writing, you're thoughtful, and it's a practice, right, for me. And so when I do that, I plan tomorrow today, which means I have a couple things. I write my morning to-do list of things for me.
This is like the after 10 p.m. or the before, or 10 a.m. or before 10 a.m.
This is everything for the day tomorrow. So I'll actually have a list that says like morning routine. Like meditate, all that stuff on there. Water, so I can check it off, right?
Okay.
Take the dogs out, for instance. And then I have like my financial target on there too because I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Where I'm at versus where I want to be. I write down all of my appointments that I have. And then right next to them, I write how I want to feel. That's the intentional part of it. To do and to be. How do I want to show up? And then I look at 3 levels of tasks, A, B, and C level activity. A is my sales activity. I want to be in there as much as possible. B level is kind of support for those A level activities, and C is like learning. And so those are some strategies I have in place. Now, what I found is what I do with that piece of paper is I take it, I put it in the book I'm reading next to my journal, put it by my bed, make sure the coffee maker's ready. All this stuff that my brain doesn't have to think about tomorrow.
Right.
That I learned from the restaurant business. We all have side work.
Yeah, side work.
And so now when I wake up tomorrow, I don't have to think. I literally just get into it.
Yeah.
And then what I found is when I don't have that little list, my security blanket's gone. I'm in chaos. I have to do it. It's part of like what anchors me in, because as entrepreneurs, there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, there's no guarantees in the corporate world either. We're
Or
just
in life, right?
100%. Uncertainty is, right? And so in between there, what happens is if my day shifts around, but I have those bookends, I have some clarity around what my day looks like. Now, what I'll also do with myself and clients is we'll kind of map out where your energy is. So when are you most creative? And so when we're most creative, we want to be utilizing that energy as much as possible. Or when are you more like in that state of like getting stuff done?
Right.
The more we do that and we shift our businesses around that, the better we're going to show up in the potency of our ability. So you don't have to be on for 12 straight hours. What if you got all your work done in 2 hours?
Yeah.
What if you were able to serve and do all these things because it's what you're putting out into the world and what you're receiving back? So that was huge for me when it comes down to like learning how to bring high performance work into my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really, I can't even think of a word. I guess it gives me hope. And I think probably a lot of people listening of like, maybe I can break out of that, 9 to 5, like just I have to do what corporate America says I have to do, and maybe I can just do what works for me. And
I think the first step, honestly, is taking a step back and assessing what is versus what we desire it to be. That's a big one, because clarity is like our ability to see everything for what it is.
Yeah.
So I always say like there's rules of the game to everything,
Right.
So if you show up to corporate like I did saying, hey, I'm going to work extra hours because I want you to validate me by both compensation and, recognition.
Yeah.
And then I quit and they don't care. Like that's me with false expectations.
Right.
So we have to recognize that we're always responding and we're always in control of our response. So we have to like really think about that from an emotional awareness standpoint of the world is, and it's our response that creates our perception. And so once we realize that, we can be in our power. But the other thing too is, there's so much crap on social media about like habits form in 21 days. It's not true, right? So habits take 21 to 266 days of meaningful repetition. So we have to choose the things that we're interested in to create the stability around, and we have to work at it. And then in the beginning, it's gonna be really hard. You're gonna feel like this. Why is this so hard? This should be easy to journal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I first started journaling, I had to turn my notebook sideways and get paper that didn't have lines on it because it used to remind me of being in school. And once I started doing that, everything started like flowing. I was like, I'm in control now. All right, this is awesome, right? Or like crayons and stuff. Like play around with it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. It sounds like you just kind of try to think outside the box and not stay like in this like structured like rules of what we're supposed to all be doing. And
yeah, I mean, I honor the structure, right? So the masculine energy is the structure. Everybody, we have these energies, both energies, right? So and especially for creatives, they want to flow, and so it's resistance to structure, but it's like the structure allows us the boundaries to just play. And so once you have that and your stuff set up, like your client acquisition and everything's solid, who you're working with, because then you're solving the right problem in your business. Now everything shifts. So to answer your question earlier about like the shifting into a different client, the thing about it is once you follow the process of understanding how to identify that client honestly and realistically, and their needs, then it makes it easier. So you're basically doing the same thing, just putting a different, I think of it as an assembly line. You're putting a different product in the front end to see what happens on the back end.
Right.
And it takes time. So if you're in that place where you're like, my clients are frustrating me, look at how much revenue they bring into your business, and then ask yourself the question, how can I replace that revenue with clients I love working with, and do it over time? Do it over the next 8 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And then that way you can have both.
So when you say do it, how do you let a client go?
Yeah. This is a great question. And so the question really is you don't blame the client. Never blame your clients.
Okay.
And that to me signifies that you are in this place of you understand like your role. It's always me first. And so when I talk to a client that I have to let go, I mean, and there's crazy stuff that's happened. Like I had to change my coaching contract because I had somebody who was showing up to appointments microdosing. How do you know? Right. And so, and the challenge is that, especially in that container of space, like coaching is not therapy. It's not, we're not working with trauma.
Right.
But microdosing on psilocybin can produce those results. And I don't want to be responsible for that.
True. Yeah.
And so we have
something
that.
you wouldn't have thought of initially to put in a contract.
Like, you're starting a business. Yeah, please don't microdose. So you have to be honest, right? And this is any relationship between partners, your spouse, anything. It's, hey, I want to find out where the gap is and have an agreement between, each other of your needs and my needs. Because the relationship is the relationship, and say, here's where I'm at, and I would love to know from you as well, like what your expectation is, because we have to set expectations in the beginning. Yeah. And so if we didn't, we have to realign and say, okay, here's what I need from you. Are you able to provide it? And vice versa, what are you looking for me? So you can say, where are we? And if the gap is too wide, we say, great, it's just not going to work. And so what I can do is I can try to find somebody else who'd be a better fit. Yeah. And then you just work it out. Yeah. But the longer you let it go, the worse it's going to be, because you're holding it in the tension of your mind. And so your brain is constantly in that stress and tension. Yes. And it needs the resolution of something. So when something new comes up, there's this idea of structural tension that you're holding between the new vision of what you want versus what's here right now, what's possible. So you either have to step in to the unknown or you go back to the comfort zone. Right. Yeah. And imagine if you could just use that time to go do the new thing, which is scary as hell for you. It's scary as hell because you don't know, right? Right. But once we begin to integrate the belief and the understanding of that's exciting, and that exhilaration and fear is just separated by how we breathe into it, right? Everything changes. Yeah. It's so true. As soon as you start breathing, your anxiety goes away. Think about this for a second. Every single day, people wake up and get out of their house. They grab the keys to their car and their coffee and their iPhone or their Android, and they pop into the car and they drive this thing 80 miles an hour. It's a 4,000-pound car. And many of us aren't waking up cold sweating about it. It's just a natural habituated behavior. Right. So we've chosen to not have an anxious response to that. Well, we value the outcome of the freedom we get from driving. So what if you started to value the outcome of the work that you're doing more than you allowed the fear to permeate? Ooh, chills. But what if I'm, devil's advocate always, sure. It's like, so what if you're like, okay, I'm going to get rid of this client because they're just, not a good fit, everything. But, and you want to believe and have it, no limiting beliefs around what's around the corner. I'm going to open my energy to a new client coming in. But then there is no new client and you can't pay your bills. There's always a new client. And so, I hear that, but my challenge always is there is a new client because other people are doing it. If you look around you, you're going to see people who are regular human beings just like you. There's nobody special. Yeah. And I had to learn that lesson because I used to say so-and-so went to this college or their family had this kind of advantage. Once you start, again, taking radical responsibility and realizing it's totally up to you and what you're going to do with it, then you start to get innovative. Like with COVID last year, it's from a human standpoint, it's very difficult to watch what happens. But quite frankly, from a standpoint of innovation and evolution, it had to happen. Yeah. Because people have to be now confronted with, unintentional behavior in their businesses and and their relationship to their children and everything. Yeah. And so sometimes we need this wake up call to show us what's actually happening. Right. Because we seek comfort and that's naturally part of our existence. Totally. So my pushback is there's always a new client because there are people doing exactly what you want to do and they're doing it well. And so it's just a function of solving the right problem. So how do you get better at solving that problem? And of course, if you can't get better at solving that problem, then there's probably a skill set gap. So what skills do we need to learn? Then we can actually put a plan together. Okay, I need to learn more about digital marketing. I need to learn more about social media. Instead of making it about the external circumstances, it forces us to get better. To just, you do the work then to get. And here's the reality of this, right? There's things that we are willing to do and not to do based on how we're perceived. And so things that I've learned in my life that helped me out of, we talk the real deal here. It's how far can your car payment go before the repossession? Yeah. Because you need that capital to get your business moving. Yeah. How far can you move that credit card payment and deal with it on the back end? Because if you need that capital and you're being serious about what you're doing, it's totally your choice. So you have to know where your risk tolerance is based upon the valued outcome that you desire. Yeah, that's not a lot of people give you permission to think that way in life, I feel like. And permission is necessary because there's something about that. Because I needed it too, especially when I went through my divorce and everything else. I mean, I was like, what am I going to do? Or you go through the barrel. We make these decisions every day that we don't recognize because we give weight to certain decisions, but it's like, what you choose to wear for the day, where you choose to hang out and spend your time. These are all unconscious decisions that are built into us, where you choose to live, what you eat. For so many years, I was like, I don't think sushi's going to be that great. And then I tried it and I was like, this is amazing. Because I had this preconceived notion, and I allowed myself to get lazy in my thinking.
Right.
So it's not easy to do this, what I'm talking about. But to me, there's nothing better. There's no greater journey than learning about that.
Mm-hmm.
Then, I always have this belief of I'm more thinking about the regret of not becoming who I could be, out of being tested, because you can always rebuild.
Yeah.
You're not going to die. That's the question I ask people. I'm like, did you die? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because we raise children, we raise these little things that are running around sticking their fingers in sockets, and it's like you just raised a child and you're starting a business. Like you got this.
Yeah.
Way harder.
You could do that. Easier. You could do this.
Yeah.
And you can always do something else if this doesn't work. Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, wow. This is so incredible. Thank you so much. I mean, I really want to talk to you for like 100 more hours, and you said a 5-part podcast, which maybe it needs to be, because
we can certainly do this more.
Yeah, I feel like we could break down everything you've put on the table into like sections and just dig into each one.
For sure.
And,
I'd be down for that. That's a great conversation.
So my biggest question now, and it's also my final question, is what, I think that we probably have hundreds of thousands of clients and business owners listening right now, and maybe millions and
billions.
And I'm sure like a lot of them are like, wow, this guy has some really unique ways of thinking about things, and I want to hear more about him. So who can work with you? How do they work with you? Who do you want to work with you? Or if they can't work with you, how can they learn your practices more? Like, how can we get more of you?
Well, right now, so I have a lot of digital assets in development. I'm actually working with Coastal right now, so I'm excited because I've been waiting for a long time to find the partners that could bring my vision to fruition.
Yeah.
So right now, my private work has been pretty much referral only. So I've kept that kind of really exclusive.
Yeah.
Typically, each quarter, I work with about 4 to 5 clients max. And I'm working with clients right now who have a background either as high-level management or executive, really clear on their technical expertise and want to build companies. I don't work well with a lot of solopreneurs, really, because I think that my interest is how can I build the structure, bring my network to the table. There's just different problems that are interesting to me at that level.
Okay.
And then my goal, honestly, is to build a portfolio of equity positions in companies that I love being a part of, so that I can provide expertise and help them out.
That's great.
So about 4 to 5 clients a quarter. I'm still fleshing out like kind of what that looks like big picture, because I might bring on some partners for that too. And I have methods that I use for my consulting and my coaching. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm on Instagram at I am Chris Delaney. And then on Clubhouse, as well as I'm honestly spending a lot of time on there doing exactly this. Like going in for, I've had rooms for 12 hours straight where we're just solving problems for businesses.
Wow.
Whatever it is. Because it's typically
so
the same thing over and over again. Client acquisition.
Right.
I bring, one of my new friends in Clubhouse, Brittany Crystal. I mean, she's responsible for building out the personal brand for Gary Vaynerchuk and Marie Forleo and Tom Billion, all these different people. And so how can I leverage their talents, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm taking some of this stuff that might be less accessible at that higher level and turning it into programs, so that it's very directly, very action focused, and partnering with some people that, can help us make sure that you have a day-to-day plan for your business.
Yeah.
And then also like in the content that I produce on both Instagram, I have a podcast launching probably later this year.
Nice.
And then the YouTube channel as well. Like it's all going to be action focused, and I'm super approachable. You can DM me on Instagram. You can email me, Chris at IamChrisDelaney.com. And
awesome. We'll put links, of course.
Yeah, always.
Awesome. Okay, great. So people, let's say a client like owns a restaurant and they're thinking about opening a few more, or, whatever. And they, they're creatives and they have like really creative visions, but they're like, they need your help. Like, so is that someone who can reach out to you and have a conversation with you?
Yeah. I mean, overall business, I'm always interested in. I can certainly help, because business is very sequential, and they're aside from some of the technical stuff, which I have access to people, I work in the strategy side. So the high level, what's our business model going to look like?
Right.
What's our plan for revenue? What partnerships do we need? What resources do we need?
Yeah.
And so I think in the day-to-day, that's kind of where I turn that loose to other folks and partners. Industries I love working with, definitely creative agencies.
Okay.
Freelancers who are really talented at what they were doing, filmmakers, videographers, photographers who are looking to start partnerships and building out studios. Amazing. Some digital marketing agencies I love working with too, who are doing major work with companies that I enjoy working with.
Okay.
And service-based entrepreneurs, predominantly coaches and consultants or subject matter experts who are looking to expand into the course creation content space, kind of scaling out philosophy is interesting. Sure. Restaurants and stuff like that are great, but they're not ideal clients for me. Okay. One, and the reason is because the margins in those industry are so small that I find that it becomes really tough to like really get the work done.
Okay.
Because we're constantly so mindful of, what does this look like? But I have some great friends in the restaurant industry. I have a good friend named Dano who has a community of like 70,000, people on Facebook.
Wow.
And he's doing a lot of work with restaurants during COVID. So that it doesn't mean I can't help. I can find the people who can.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for really outlining, who should come work with you. Because I know we have listeners that are in those spaces, so I hope they reach out to you.
Of course. And there's a lot of exciting things. Like, I'm open. The big thing for me is I've always had a dream to build out a media agency personally.
Yeah.
And create content that is deeply meaningful. And the vision in the future of what we're doing at Clubhouse is really building global community, getting to stadium size events.
Yeah.
And we've built some really strong alliances on Clubhouse. I mean, we had a meeting of 12 people we met on Clubhouse yesterday that each one of them represents a huge community.
Wow.
And you're talking about like Grammy award-winning creatives and people in the branding space and marketing, but also like we're really turning the idea of human connection and business as like an intersection and having those conversations. So,
that's
really
cool.
Excited about the future of what everything looks like.
I'm glad we're friends because I'm just going to watch this unfold and just be along for the ride as
we're gonna rope you into
it. Let me get your autograph now. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Chris.
This is a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
To be continued.
100%.
All right. Yay. If you have any questions for us or need help getting started, check us out on social media. We are on Instagram at Conscious Accounting, and our website is conscious-accounting.com, or you could email us at info@conscious-accounting.com.